The photo hit me harder than a punch. No warning, no wind-up, just a casual scroll on a quiet Saturday morning. Still in my robe, watering the lawn like every other weekend for the last 27 years, I felt safe. The sun was barely up, the coffee machine hissing behind me. For a moment, everything was normal. Routine. Safe. Then my phone buzzed. A notification. Alice was in Dallas, supposedly at a sales conference. But the picture staring back at me told a different story. She stood beside Bryce, the office golden boy, all teeth and no spine. One arm wrapped around her shoulder, the other holding two drinks. Her head tilted toward him like they were posing for engagement photos, her hand resting lightly on his chest. The caption read, "My real partner. Hashtag Workisband for life." 2 hearts. 57 likes. 16 comments. All nauseating. Love you too. Office goals. Finally, just say it already. I reread it. Once. Twice. A dry laugh escaped me, the kind that dies halfway out of your throat. But I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't yell. I walked inside, poured the rest of the coffee, opened the kitchen drawer, and pulled out the beige folder I had prepared 3 weeks ago. Not in anticipation. Back then I still had some dignity. But after overhearing her whispering with Bryce late one night in the guest bathroom, she had said, "If only you weren't married." That night I started keeping receipts. Emotional ones at first, then financial, then legal. The folder contained everything: petition, disclosures, division of assets. My lawyer had called it clean and aggressive. I placed it on the kitchen table like a dealer throwing down the last card. Then I opened Facebook. Her post was still there. Of course it was. I typed one line beneath it. "Congratulations. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table." Posted. Logged out. And then, with the same steady rhythm as before, I went back outside to water the grass. The sprinkler hissed. The air smelled of coffee and pennies. And inside the silence was already beginning to breathe. The phone rang at 9:14 a.m. sharp. Her name lit up the screen. Alice. I let it buzz 3 times before answering. Silence on my end, just to let her feel the distance. "Daniel." Her voice was light, too light. That nervous tremor she used when she knew she'd been caught. What is this? The comment on Facebook? I sipped my coffee before answering. "It's exactly what it says. You're overreacting," she snapped, volume rising a fraction. "Bryce is just a friend. A work thing. People joke online, you know that." I flipped a page in the folder, loud enough for her to hear. "A joke? That why you spent $486 at the Marriott downtown last month? Room service for 2. The silence on her end stretched. Long, heavy. Finally, "You went through my statements?" "No," I said, calm, measured. "The bank sent them. We share an account. Remember?" Her breath quickened. "Daniel, listen, this isn't what you think. I can explain." "You don't need to," I replied, standing now, walking toward the window. The lawn shimmered in the morning light. Neighbors waved across the fence. "You already did. Don't do this." Her voice cracked, but she tried to stitch it back together with a laugh. "We've been married 27 years. You're not throwing that away because of some stupid photo." I smiled faintly at my reflection in the glass. "I'm not throwing it away, Alice." "You did." Her tone shifted, sharp now, the mask slipping. "So what? You'll leave me? You think you'll be fine on your own? You need me, Daniel. Who's going to keep this house in order? Who's going to?" I cut her off, quiet, precise. "The house is mine. The deed's in my name. Always has been." That silence, longer than before. She tried again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Let's talk when I get home. Please. Just don't do anything rash." I closed the folder, tapped it once against the table, and said, "I don't do rash." Then I hung up. Alice came home a day early. Sunday evening, 6:42 p.m. I know because I was sitting in the den with the blinds half open, watching her white Lexus roll into the driveway. The door shut harder than usual. The suitcase wheels bumped against the entry tiles. She called out, pretending at normalcy. "Daniel? I'm back." I didn't answer. She found me in the den, a book in my hands, though I hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. She forced a smile, her lipstick too bright, perfume too heavy. A disguise. "Hi," she said, setting her suitcase down as if that alone could anchor her. "Miss me?" I looked at her the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray, clinical, detached. "You should unpack upstairs." Her laugh was brittle. "That's it. No hug. No kiss. You're really letting a Facebook post get to you. I placed the book on the table, careful, deliberate. You told him he was your real partner. It was a joke, she said quickly, too quickly. Bryce, he's harmless. You know how office culture is. People say things online all the time. I leaned forward, hands folded. Room 514. Marriott. 2 glasses on the receipt. Care to explain the joke there? Her face shifted. Anger, then panic, then something hollow. You checked. I didn't need to check. It came to me. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to do with her hands. She clasped them, unclasped them, tugged at the edge of her sleeve. Daniel, she whispered, soft now, weaponized. Don't throw away everything we've built. I stood, walked to the cabinet by the window, and pulled out a thin stack of papers. Slid them across the table toward her. The folder. Beige, unmarked. She stared at it like it might catch fire. What is this? Draft decree of divorce. Asset division. Already reviewed. She didn't open it. Just pressed her palm on top of it, as though weight alone could keep the words inside. You're bluffing. I tilted my head. You'll find I don't bluff. The air in the room thickened. She tried to smile again, brittle and desperate. Daniel, please. Let's just talk. Tomorrow. Over dinner. I'll make your favorite. I shook my head slowly. No. Tomorrow you'll meet my lawyer. Her hand slipped from the folder. For once, she was silent. And in that silence, I saw it. Her first real glimpse of the ground crumbling beneath her. Alice didn't open the folder that night. She carried it upstairs with her suitcase, like a child clutching a stuffed toy against the dark. I listened to her footsteps retreating across the hardwood, the bedroom door shutting with a muted click. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I already knew what she'd do. She'd set the papers on her vanity, pour herself a glass of Chardonnay, and skim just enough to realize they weren't drafts. They were instructions. A chessboard laid out with every move accounted for. The next morning, I was in the kitchen at 7:12, frying eggs, when she walked in. She was dressed for work, hair pinned tight, lipstick toned down. She carried the folder under her arm, but didn't mention it. Morning, she said, reaching for the coffee pot. I glanced up. Morning. Her smile was too sharp. You sleep well. Perfectly. We ate in silence. She scrolled her phone. I skimmed the newspaper. To anyone watching, we were an ordinary couple sharing breakfast. But underneath, the ground had shifted. She thought she still had time to negotiate. She didn't. At 8:03 a.m., she kissed me on the cheek, performed like muscle memory, and left for the office. By 8:07, I was on the phone with my financial advisor. Pull the trigger, I said. By noon, 3 accounts were frozen. 2 joint credit cards were canceled. The home equity line she used for her personal expenses, clothing, spa visits, those sudden business trips, was suspended pending litigation. At 2:14, I forwarded copies of the frozen account notices to my lawyer, who uploaded them into our case file. The subject line of my email read simply, "Preparation complete." Meanwhile, Alice still thought she had time. I knew because at 4:26, my phone buzzed with her text. Dinner tonight? My treat. Let's talk things through. Red heart. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into our shared cloud drive, the one she forgot I had access to, and downloaded 3 folders labeled innocently enough: Q1 reports, wellness receipts, vacation drafts. Inside were photos, screenshots, emails, all of Bryce, his hand brushing hers across a wine glass. Hotel confirmations, even an itinerary for a conference in Chicago next month, 2 tickets, 1 room. I copied everything into a flash drive and placed it in the beige folder beside the divorce petition. Evidence isn't noise. It's music, and music needs to be conducted at the right tempo. That evening, Alice came home with takeout. Thai food, my favorite once. She set the bags on the counter, pulling out cartons with 2 bright smiles. I thought we could eat together. Just talk. I closed my laptop gently. Talk about what? She exhaled, lowering her voice. About us. About fixing this. I know I've made mistakes, Daniel, but we've been married for nearly 3 decades. You don't just throw that away. I studied her for a long moment. Then I asked, very softly, is Bryce worth 30 years? Her hands froze mid-motion, a pair of chopsticks hovering in the air. She tried to laugh, but it broke halfway. There's nothing. I raised a hand. Don't lie. Not now. Her lips pressed tight. For a moment, She looked older, lines around her eyes deepening under the kitchen light. "You're really serious about this," she whispered. "I was serious the night you stopped being my wife." The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. She set the chopsticks down, folded the cartons back into the bag, and without another word carried it all to the trash. She didn't mention dinner again. The following week was a study in unraveling. Monday morning, she tried to use the joint card at a boutique. Declined. She called me immediately. "There's something wrong with the account." "No," I said evenly. "There's something right with it. It's closed." She sputtered, furious. "You can't just—" "I can." And I did. Tuesday, she attempted to transfer funds from the home equity line. Denied. By the afternoon, she was pacing the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, whispering into the receiver like a fugitive. Wednesday, she came home late, tossed her bag onto the couch, and finally cracked. "You're trying to destroy me," she hissed. I looked up from my paperwork, calm as ever. "No, I'm simply removing myself from the role of sponsor. You told the world Bryce was your real partner. Let him pay." Her face twisted, equal parts rage and fear. "He doesn't have that kind of money. That's not my problem." She stood there for a long time, eyes darting like she was calculating exits. But there weren't any. Every road she thought she controlled now ended at a locked gate, and I had the only keys. By Friday, the cracks had spread into panic. I came home from the office to find her in the study, rifling through drawers, searching for something, anything, that might still belong to her. When she heard me, she straightened quickly, smoothing her blouse. "I was just organizing." "Of course," I said, setting my briefcase down. She lingered by the desk, then turned to me with a thin smile. "We can still fix this, you know. You and I. We don't have to end things like this." I tilted my head, studying her. "End things like what?" "Like enemies." I stepped closer, lowered my voice. "No, Alice. Enemies fight. I'm not fighting you. I'm erasing you." Her breath caught. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally asked, "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, I walked past her, opened the beige folder, and slid out the flash drive. Placed it on the desk between us. Her eyes widened. She recognized it instantly, though she hadn't yet seen its contents. "Every receipt, every email, every photo," I said calmly. "If you want to continue, I'll let the judge see them. If you want to save face, you'll sign quietly. Either way, your name fades from the accounts by month's end." She swallowed hard. "You wouldn't." I leaned closer, so close she could see her reflection in my glasses. "Try me." The room went still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hesitate between ticks. She stepped back, clutching her arms, the fight draining out of her. And for the first time in years, Alice, my wife, the woman who thought she could orchestrate my silence, looked small. I picked up the flash drive, returned it to the folder, and closed it with a soft thud. "Dinner's in the fridge," I said, turning toward the stairs. I didn't look back, but I heard it, the faint sound of her breath catching, the quiet collapse of a woman who finally realized she was no longer ahead. She was cornered. And worse, she knew it. And I hadn't even played my last move. I expected it. The moment Alice realized her grip on finances was gone, she turned to her oldest tactic, people. When manipulation doesn't work with money, the next currency is sympathy. And children, our children, though the words suddenly felt misplaced, were her favorite bargaining chips. It began on a Saturday. Late morning. The house smelled of pancakes and syrup, sunlight stretching across the dining room floor. Chloe and Ben were already at the table, scrolling through their phones, laughing at something only teenagers found funny. Alice breezed in, her tone unusually bright. "Kids," she announced, setting a plate of strawberries on the table. "I need to tell you something important." I didn't move. I was at the counter, rinsing dishes, back half-turned. I knew what was coming, and I wanted her to think she had the stage. She clasped her hands together, leaning in just enough for dramatic effect. "Your father and I, we're having some disagreements. He's been upset lately, and sometimes when people are upset, they make rash choices." Chloe frowned. "What choices?" Alice glanced at me, then back to them. "Well, he's talking about changing how things are around here. Money, school, even the house. But I want you both to know, none of this is your fault. I'll always take care of you." Ben looked up from his phone, confused. "Wait, what's going on? Are you guys getting divorced?" Alice put on her practiced half-smile, the one she wore at funerals and PTA meetings. Not if I can help it. But your dad's angry. He doesn't always think about how his actions affect other people. It was subtle, calculated. She didn't say I was cruel. She didn't say I was abandoning them. She let the suggestion hang there, unspoken but thick in the air. Dad is unstable. Dad is selfish. Dad is the problem. I dried my hands, set the towel down, and turned. Calm. Even. Kids, I said softly, why don't you grab your jackets? I'll take you out for the afternoon. Let your mom rest. Chloe looked at Alice, then at me. Where are we going? Library. Maybe ice cream after. Ben perked up. Yes. He bolted upstairs for his sneakers. Chloe hesitated, always more cautious. Is everything okay? Alice touched her arm gently. It's fine, sweetheart. Just listen to your father. When they were upstairs, Alice's smile collapsed. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You're poisoning them against me. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting. That's exactly what you just tried to do. Her face flushed red, but before she could respond, Chloe reappeared. I opened the door, ushering them out. Alice stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching us leave. As I backed out of the driveway, I didn't wave. She didn't either. The library was quiet, just the way I needed it. Ben disappeared into the graphic novel section while Chloe browsed biographies. I sat at a corner table with my laptop, pulling up documents I'd prepared weeks ago. Savings accounts, trust papers, school authorizations. It wasn't about control. It was about clarity. If Alice wanted to use the children as leverage, I would make sure leverage didn't exist. At 2:17 p.m., I emailed the school district. The message was short, sterile, and impossible to misinterpret. Please update your records to reflect that all financial obligations, permissions, and parental contacts are to be handled solely by Alice Callahan. Remove my information from billing, emergency, and administrative lists. Effective immediately. Within an hour, I received confirmation. At 3:42 p.m., I logged into the college fund portal. Authorization removed. Beneficiary adjusted. Alice's name now sat alone in the responsibility column. At 4:05, I drafted letters for extracurricular programs, soccer, piano, tutoring, informing them of the same. All responsibility now fell on her shoulders. By the time we sat down for ice cream, the transition was complete. Chloe watched me between spoonfuls of mint chocolate chip. Dad, is something wrong with Mom? I kept my voice steady. No, but she and I see things differently. And that's okay. What matters is, you two are fine. You'll always be fine. Ben, distracted by sprinkles, didn't notice the weight in my tone. Chloe did. Her eyes lingered, thoughtful, but she didn't push. That evening, Alice pounced the moment we walked through the door. How dare you take them without telling me? She snapped, arms folded tight. I set my keys on the counter. They're my children too. Or at least, I thought they were. Her face tightened, but she forced a breath, lowering her voice so the kids wouldn't hear. You're trying to turn them against me. You think you're clever, but they'll see through you. I met her gaze, calm and unflinching. No, Alice. They'll see you, and I won't need to say a word. She blinked, caught off guard by the precision of it. Then she tried a different tactic, softness. Daniel, please. We can still fix this. Don't put the kids in the middle. I stepped past her, toward the den. I didn't. You did. And now you'll carry that weight yourself. By Monday morning, she understood. The first call came at 9:12 a.m., Chloe's school nurse. A minor fever, asking if one of us could pick her up. Normally, that call would have gone to both parents. But the system had been updated. It went to Alice alone. She called me, frantic. Why didn't they contact you? They did, I said simply. Last week. I told them to remove me from the list. You're the sole contact now. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You can't do that. I already did. The second call came 2 days later, from Mason's piano teacher. Missed payment. Again, routed only to Alice. By Thursday, the tuition office emailed her directly about the next quarter's fees, $12,000 due by the end of the month. She forwarded it to me, subject line, handle this. I replied with a single line, not my responsibility. At 11:47 p.m. that night, I found her in the study, laptop open, head in her hands. Credit card statements scattered across the desk, numbers circled, balances highlighted. She looked up when I entered, eyes red from either tears or rage. I couldn't tell. You're destroying me, she whispered. No, Alice, I said softly, leaning against the doorframe. I'm letting you live with the story you wrote. She slammed the laptop shut, stood, and stepped toward me. I'll tell them everything. Chloe, Ben, they'll hate you for abandoning them. I tilted my head. Will they? Or will they notice who's really paying attention when the lights go out? Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to fight, to claw back some sense of control. But she couldn't, because deep down, she knew, the children weren't pawns anymore. They were witnesses, and witnesses don't lie. The next morning, as I packed lunches, Chloe wandered into the kitchen. She hesitated, watching me slice apples into neat wedges. Dad, she asked softly, are we okay? I smiled faintly, handing her the lunchbox. We're better than okay. She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. Alice entered a minute later, dressed sharp, face painted back into composure. She brushed past Chloe, kissed her on the forehead, then glanced at me. Our eyes met for just a second, enough for her to see the truth. She had tried to weaponize the children, but all she'd done was hand them the evidence of who cared and who only pretended. And I wasn't even finished yet. Because the cruelest revenge isn't fire. It's frost. And the house was only beginning to freeze. Alice lasted 2 more weeks before making her move. I knew she would. She was a creature of habit. When family failed, when money failed, she always reached for flattery. And the one person foolish enough to believe her illusions was Bryce. The text came to her phone on a Tuesday night, and though she angled the screen away, the reflection in the kitchen window betrayed her. I didn't need to read the words. The look on her face was enough. Relief. Desperation disguised as hope. She excused herself, claiming she had calls to make for work. Minutes later, the garage door opened. The Lexus backed out. I gave her 20 minutes head start before leaving myself. It was almost laughably easy. Bryce wasn't clever. He wasn't careful. He wasn't me. The hotel reservation was under his own name, as predictable as a child signing homework in crayon. Room 318, Belmore Suites, downtown. I didn't confront them. Not directly. That would have been too loud, too obvious. Instead, I sat in the hotel bar, a corner booth where I could see the elevators. At 8:47 p.m., Alice appeared. White blouse, black skirt, smile rehearsed. She didn't look like a woman meeting her husband's replacement. She looked like a gambler betting her last chips. Bryce greeted her in the lobby with that idiotic grin, 2 martinis already in hand. I watched her take one, lean in close, laugh too loudly at nothing. A performance for herself more than for him. They disappeared into the elevator. I let them go. At 9:06, I sent the email. Subject, regarding your employee. 2. Human Resources, Halverson and Company. Attachments, 8 JPGs, 1 PDF. The photos spoke louder than I ever could. Alice and Bryce, together at conferences, together in hotels, together in places billed as business expenses. The PDF was a clean, chronological breakdown of every transaction I'd logged from our joint account. Hotel charges, dinners, flights. All neatly tied back to dates of supposed company events. Corporate doesn't care about love, but it cares deeply about liability. I closed my laptop, finished my drink, and left before the elevator brought them back down. The fallout arrived 3 days later. Alice stormed into the kitchen, eyes blazing. You ruined him. I was reading the paper, coffee steaming beside me. I didn't look up. Ruined who? Bryce. He was put on leave yesterday. HR called him in, showed him everything. He said someone. She stopped herself, but the pause was enough. I folded the paper neatly. He was stealing from his company, Alice. Using corporate cards to fund your vacations. He ruined himself. Her voice cracked. He's been suspended. They're reviewing his position. He could lose everything. I sipped my coffee unhurried. Then perhaps he wasn't much of a partner. She gripped the counter, knuckles white. Why are you doing this? What do you get out of destroying me? I stood slowly, setting the mug down with deliberate care. This isn't destruction. It's exposure. You built a house of glass, Alice. I'm just opening the blinds. For the first time in weeks, she didn't respond. She just stared at me, eyes wide, realizing the safety net she thought Bryce provided had been cut before she even climbed into it. That evening, when the children were asleep, I overheard her on the phone, whispering, pleading, Bryce, please, you can fight this. They don't have proof. They can't fire you for this. It's personal. A pause. Then her voice shrank. You're breaking up with me? After everything Bryce? Bryce. The silence afterward was heavier than any scream. She sat on the edge of the bed for nearly an hour, motionless, phone clutched like a corpse in her hand. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to me. It was to herself. He'll come back. He has to. I lay beside her, eyes closed, breathing steady. She thought I was asleep, but I was listening to the sound of her foundation crumbling. The next morning, she tried one last angle. At breakfast, she cleared her throat, smoothing her blouse as though preparing for a presentation. "Daniel," she said carefully, "I've been thinking. Maybe we could put this behind us. For the children's sake." I buttered my toast, waiting. She pressed on. "I made mistakes. But we've both made mistakes over the years, haven't we? What matters is the future. We could go to counseling. Rebuild. Show Chloe and Ben that families stay together." I looked at her then, really looked. Not as my wife, not as my betrayer, but as a woman cornered, bargaining with smoke. "No, Alice. Families don't stay together. People do. And you left long before I filed papers." Her mask cracked. "You think you're better than me?" I set down the knife. "No, just stronger." The words landed like a gavel. She fell silent, hands trembling slightly as she reached for her coffee. By the end of the week, Bryce was gone. Officially terminated for misuse of company funds. Word spread quickly. Offices love gossip more than oxygen. Alice became collateral damage in whispers. Wasn't she the one always traveling with him? Didn't she expense that trip to Dallas? Her phone calls dwindled. Her lunches with friends vanished. The invitations stopped arriving. One night, she sat across from me at the dinner table, untouched food between us. "You've taken everything," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, Alice. I've simply given everything back to where it belonged. To truth. To consequences. You took." I returned. She pushed her plate away, stood, and left the room. I didn't follow. The cruelest part? I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to shout or strike or threaten. I simply let her live in the light she'd been hiding from. And it burned hotter than any revenge I could have spoken aloud. The children watched, quietly, sensing the shift. Chloe became more withdrawn, studying late in her room. Ben stopped asking his mother for rides, preferring to wait for me. They didn't say it, but they felt it, the gravity pulling away from her, toward me. Alice, meanwhile, shrank. Each day a little smaller, her confidence drained, her charm rejected. She had built her entire life on attention, on admiration. Without it, she was air, and I hadn't even revealed my last piece. Because revenge, like chess, isn't about the first move. It's about the final one. And hers was already on the board. The hearing was set for a Wednesday. Gray skies, drizzle on the courthouse steps. Fitting. Alice arrived in a navy suit, pearls at her neck, her lawyer trailing like a shadow. She carried herself as though dignity were armor, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of desperation. She had one card left, sympathy. Inside, the courtroom smelled of varnished wood and stale paper. The judge presided with weary eyes, the kind that had seen every permutation of betrayal. Alice's attorney began with a performance worthy of theater. "Your Honor, this is not simply a matter of division of assets. This is a matter of fairness. My client has dedicated nearly 3 decades to this marriage, raising children, maintaining a home, and supporting Mr. Callahan while he built his career. To sever her now, without support, would be cruel." Alice dabbed her eyes with a tissue, perfectly timed. Chloe and Ben sat behind us, watching. She wanted them to see their mother as a victim. When it was my attorney's turn, he didn't grandstand. He simply slid the beige folder across the table. "Your Honor," he said, voice calm, "we submit into evidence documented proof of repeated infidelity, misuse of marital funds, and intent to misrepresent financial records. Included are receipts, photographs, and testimony verifying that Mrs. Callahan's actions directly contributed to the dissolution of this marriage." The judge leafed through the documents. The photos, the emails, the hotel receipts. His face didn't change, but the silence in the room shifted. Even Alice's lawyer hesitated before continuing. Alice turned toward me, eyes wide. She mouthed one word, "Please." I didn't respond. By the end of the session, temporary orders were issued, joint custody, but sole financial responsibility shifted toward her pending review. Assets frozen, but not in her favor. The house mine. Retirement accounts, protected. As we left the courtroom, Alice clutched my arm, whispering furiously, You're killing me, Daniel. I paused, met her gaze with the same calm I'd carried from the first moment. No, Alice. You're killing yourself. I'm just turning on the lights. She dropped my arm as though burned. The weeks that followed were quiet, almost eerily so. Alice retreated inward. She no longer hosted dinners, no longer posted pictures online. The woman who once thrived on appearances now avoided mirrors. One evening, Chloe came to me while I was fixing a loose hinge on the back door. "Dad," she said softly, "Mom's different. She cries a lot. She says you hate her." I set the screwdriver down, wiped my hands, and looked at her. "I don't hate her, Chloe. But sometimes, when people make choices, they have to live with them. That's not hate. That's consequence." She nodded slowly, thoughtful beyond her years. "Are we okay?" I smiled faintly. "Better than okay. Because now you get to see what truth looks like." Ben overheard, and later, as we drove to soccer practice, he asked bluntly, "Are you going to make her move out?" "Yes," I said simply. He nodded. No argument, no protest. Just understanding. Children notice more than they admit. Meanwhile, Alice's attempts to salvage dignity grew more erratic. She showed up at Chloe's school unannounced, tried to volunteer at events where parents avoided her, whispered to friends who gave polite excuses to leave early. And late at night, I would hear her in the study, pacing, phone calls unanswered. The world she had built, half image, half illusion, was gone. And she knew I had orchestrated every step. The final hearing arrived 6 months later. By then, Alice had shed weight, her eyes hollow. Bryce had vanished. Rumors said he left town, maybe even the state. Her friends were few, her reputation bruised beyond repair. She entered court with the same pearls, though they no longer gleamed. Her lawyer made one last attempt. "My client seeks spousal support. Given the years she has invested in this marriage and her current inability to maintain her standard of living." The judge looked at me. "Mr. Callahan, any response?" My attorney stood. Calm. Precise. "Your Honor, my client anticipated this request, which is why he established a trust 6 months ago. Not for Mrs. Callahan, but for the children's education and welfare. Every cent previously allocated for her has been redirected there. As such, Mr. Callahan declines spousal support." The judge nodded slowly, reviewing the documents. "And these funds are irrevocably tied to the children?" "Yes, Your Honor." Alice's face went pale. She realized, in that instant, the cruel precision of it. Not only had I removed her from my life, but I had ensured every resource bypassed her entirely. She wasn't just excluded. She was irrelevant. She tried to speak, voice cracking. "You can't." The gavel struck. Motion denied. Divorce granted. And with that, it was over. As I rose, I glanced at Alice. Her shoulders slumped, her pearls hanging loose against her collarbone. She looked less like an adversary and more like an echo. Chloe and Ben met me at the door. They didn't say much, but the way Chloe slipped her hand into mine was enough. Alice walked out alone. The house was mine. Quiet now, steady. Alice had moved into a small apartment across town, paid for with what little she salvaged. She tried once more to call, late one evening, her voice trembling on the voicemail. "Daniel, I didn't mean for it to end like this. I thought I needed more. But I was wrong. Please, just talk to me." I deleted it without replaying. The children adapted. Chloe thrived at school. Ben found his stride in soccer. They visited their mother, but less often than the court required. They said little about it, and I never pressed. One Sunday morning, months later, I found myself walking the neighborhood, the air crisp with autumn. A neighbor waved, asked how I was doing. "Better than ever," I said simply. And it was true, because revenge hadn't been about destruction. It hadn't been about making Alice suffer. It was about precision, about reminding her, step by step, that every action has consequence, and every lie leaves a trace. As I reached my front porch, I paused, looking at the house I had built, the silence I had earned. Some revenge is loud, but the most dangerous? It's whispering.